Good morning, everybody. Welcome to North Monco Tech Career Center. Chef Cole here, coming to you live from our main production kitchen. Topic of today is going to be filleting a flatfish, or what's also known as an undulating fish. What that refers to is a fish that swims horizontally, or in other words, undulates instead of vertically. So there's a few differences in the structure between this and what we're probably used to in terms of like salmon and trout and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit about the structure. We're going to go ahead and break this down and show you how to take it down all the way to a servable fillet. So before we get started, the fish we're working with today is an Alaskan halibut. It's a bottom-dwelling fish. This one's a rather small one. This one's about 15 pounds. The larger Alaskan halibut can go up into the 700 to 800 pound range. So they can get really large. It's a bottom-dwelling fish. It's really a predatory fish, but it's also susceptible to other larger predators like sharks and things like that. You notice the coloration on the top is darker. That's the camouflage side. And on the underside of the halibut, it's white. In other words, this is going to be the bottom of the fish. In other words, this is the part of the fish that rests on the bottom of the ocean. Obviously, you can probably figure out if it shows that white underside to a larger predator, this guy's pretty much done in the ocean. All right, so to get started on it, first thing we have to identify is where our fillets are going to come from. Because it's an undulating flatfish, the bone structure is different than that of a round fish or a salmon, a trout, things like that. What we need to do is locate our spine. With salmon and trout, we have what's called a mid-bone spine. With the undulating or flatfish, other things in the family, by the way, are halibut, flounder, fluke, things of that nature. What we're going to do is we're going to locate the spine by cutting down into the skin and breaking through it so we can physically see it. And the way we determine the location of that is by something called the lateral line. All right, the lateral line where I'm running my finger right now, also referred to sometimes as the blood line on the fish. What that is that tells us the location, not only where the spine is located in this fish, it also gives us a location for the spinal cord. In other words, in this fish, when it's swimming and out in the ocean, the spinal cord connects to the actual spine, the backbone, goes through the center of the fish, and from that come the rib bones and all the nervous system and blood flow and everything that goes through the fish to keep it alive. Last thing on the structure, because this is a flat fish or an undulating fish, the dorsal fins are on the sides instead of top and bottom. So on a trout or a bass that swims vertically, the dorsal fin is on the top. That allows the fish to move side to side, up and down. This are your dorsal fins, technically, on a flatfish. They're on the sides. So as this fish swims through the ocean, the tail provides the power. The dorsal fins are like a rudder on a boat, so they move it up and down, side to side. All right, so what I'm going to do to get started, start the tail in, locate the lateral line, which you can see. You can actually see it if you look at the top fillet of the fish. Okay, you can actually see the lateral line right down through the center. So my goal is to break through the lateral line down to the spine and then remove, it's going to be 4 fillets off of this fish. One here, and then when we flip the other side, we have the same structure. You get a better idea once you see the inside of it. So I'm going to take my knife down as close to the tail, the end of the tail as I possibly can, and I'm going to cut right along that lateral line until I feel resistance from the spine. I'm going to take that all the way up to the head of the fish. Real important, especially with halibut. Halibut's a very, very expensive fish, so we want to make sure we cut as close to the bone structure as possible, and we want to make sure we get as much utilization out of this fish as we can. So what I'm doing now, I'm creating some tension with my opposite hand, in my case, my left hand, and I'm pulling the fillet back away from the rib cage. So I'm pulling it back. Okay, what that does is it creates the tension from the fillet against the ribs, so I can get a nice clean cut going down all the way to the bottom of the fish and remove that side by using the flexibility of my fillet knife. It's real important you have a flexible and very sharp knife when you're doing this. So I'm going to continue dragging that down until I get to the bottom of the ribs, or the end of the ribs, which are closest to the dorsal fin that's closest to me. And don't forget about this end up here by the tail as well. Remember, we want to get full utilization. So I'm going to keep creating the tension, pulling back with my left hand until I get down to the bottom of the fish. Once I get down to the bottom of the fish, I'm going to start removing that side right along the edge of the dorsal. I don't want that dorsal to be part of the fillet that I actually removed. Okay, as I'm removing this back, you can see what we have is I have the side of the halibut, the first quarter of it, because remember there's 4 fillets on this, that still has the skin intact. We're going to remove that skin in 1 second. What I want you to see, if you take a look, as I lift this up, we have the spot right there where the spine is, goes through the center of the fish, and we have filleted this all the way down, following the rib bones, so we're as close to those rib bones as possible. Okay, it's really, really important we cut that down. So I'm going to set this aside for a second. Because we're going to work on the rest of that guy here in a minute. Thank you. My next step, I want to remove the skin off this side. I want a nice clean fillet that I'm going to go ahead and use, portion it down, and cut it down for service. If I run my fingers along the edges, the reason I'm going to do that is I want to feel, make sure there's no little pin bones or anything else that's going to be sharp. That's going to be, because our fillet, remember, has to be fully boneless, and we want these fillets to be skinless as well. The skin on a halibut isn't generally the type of skin on fish that you would want to eat. It's really tough, it's really fibrous, it's tough to break through. It just doesn't make for a good experience for the customers. So now I'm going to switch knives. I'm going to switch over to a carving knife for something longer and bigger. Now, if this was a trout or a smaller fish, I could do this process with a smaller knife, be it a boning knife, fillet knife. Because it's a larger fillet, I'm going to move to a larger knife. However, I still need that flexibility in that knife. Okay? I'm going to start at the tail end. I'm going to make a little angled cut, about 45 degrees, down to the skin, not through the skin, so I can make a little handle, and that's going to give me something to grab a hold of with my left hand. I'm going to use then the flexibility of my knife to go against the skin and remove it all the way out to the end, this being the head end of the fish now, using that carving knife all the way out to the end without cutting through the skin, without breaking through the skin. So again, it's real important your knife is very flexible when you do this. I'm going to drag against the blade, take that all the way out. Okay, and then what that does is allows me to get the skin off all the way down to the skin. I don't really have any waste on there. And I can set that aside. I probably won't use that for anything. And what I'm left with, I can clean this up a little bit. What I mean by that is just trim off some of those loose edges that were part of the ribs, things like that. I have a little bit of a bloodline right here, and I can feel a bone there, so I'm going to use my knife. Instead of cutting down into it, I'm going to shave that section off instead of trying to physically pick those bones out. A lot of times, you'll do more damage to the fillet by trying to pull the bones out than just kind of shaving them off with your knife. Anyway, that's what I end up with is a nice clean halibut fillet. Really, really high quality fish, very expensive. Once again, the keys to this are recognizing the structure of the fish, using a very flexible, very sharp knife, and being careful and cautious as you're doing this process. There's a lot of money in front of us right here, so we have to take care and caution in commercial foods. Okay? That's it for filleting a flatfish. Check out some of the other videos on YouTube. And obviously, if you have any questions, comments, you can go ahead and post those on there. After that, thank you. Chef Cole signing off.